Hello everyone. So Haus Labs has come out with a few new products, and so I thought that this would be a good time to talk about the brand in general. So they have re-released their blush line, and they have come out with two new shades. So I have both of the new shades, and I also have one of the existing shades. So I will be talking about that. In addition, I have really liked their new lip glaze line, and I have 3 shades of that. So I will be discussing this particular product. And in addition, I have pretty much everything else that Haus Labs has released in the past. So I will be putting on a full face of makeup of the kind that I wear every day that takes 5 or 10 minutes. And I will talk about each product as I put it on. So first, a little bit of information about me. I'm 59 years old, and I have dry and sensitive skin, and I have never had any kind of cosmetic procedures like injections or surgery, and I don't intend to do that. And so therefore, I am hoping that the kinds of makeup and skincare products that I talk about on this channel can help me to look a little bit fresher and a little bit younger. And over the past 3 years, I've tried more than 1,000 makeup products, and so I have a pretty good basis of comparison for everything that I discuss on this channel. And one thing that I have found out is that there are certain ingredients that are in products that always do irritate my skin, and I know that those tend to be irritating for many other people as well. And so I just don't talk about products that contain those ingredients on this channel. So Haus Labs is the makeup line that is associated with Lady Gaga, and she has talked about having fibromyalgia, so I think it does make some sense that she would have created a makeup line that consists of products that don't have a lot of problematic ingredients in it, because fibromyalgia does tend to be associated with chemical sensitivities. Now, in the past, she had a line that was sold through Amazon, but that was not a line that I ever tried. And then in the middle of 2022, so that was about 2 years ago, she came out with an entirely new line that is just sold through Sephora and her own website. So as I say, I've tried out pretty much everything that Haus Labs has offered, and I have been really impressed with pretty much all of it. Now, obviously, Lady Gaga has a much different makeup style than I usually use, and obviously she's much more flamboyant. And so, as you would expect, some of the products in some of the shades especially may not be that appropriate for people with my kind of makeup style. But I am really impressed with the quality of these products. I feel like that they have all worked really well for me, and that there's been, with very few exceptions, they haven't irritated my skin. And so I've really enjoyed using them, and I've been able to make almost all of them work for me, even using them on my makeup style. So let's talk first about the blush. So they first introduced this blush about a year ago, and this is a powder blush. It has a lot of squalane and other types of moisturizing ingredients in it. I just picked up this shade, which I thought would be the easiest one for me to wear because it's a peach shade. This is called Pomelo Peach, and it is a totally matte blush. It doesn't have any shimmer in it at all. And I think that it's a lovely formula. I think that it goes on very nicely, but I also think that it's very, very pigmented. And that of all the shades that I tried out, and I did try all the shades, that this one was actually the easiest one for me to wear, and probably the least pigmented. And then the others were even more so. But nonetheless, I found this to be so pigmented that I really needed to use like a little fan brush or a special type of a brush that didn't put too much pigment on. And I am not quite sure why they decided that they wanted to make it so pigmented. Obviously, some people that are following Lady Gaga's makeup style would want a really pigmented blush, but there's an awfully lot of people out there that are have a complexion like me, where if they put on too much blush like that, it just tends to look really garish. And I'm a little bit perplexed why they only had 5 shades, and especially since they had 10 shades of highlighter, 12 shades of bronzer, 51 shades of foundation, and then they later came out with 31 shades of concealer. And yet with the blush, they had a limited range of blush, and they also seemed to be taking the position that they would make a blush that was as pigmented as anyone could want it, and then for people that have lighter skin, that they could just use less of it. And it's not exactly that I wasn't able to make that blush work, but it is the case that you have to be very, very careful if you have a skin tone like mine and you don't want to have a huge amount of blush on your cheeks because it can get carried away very easily. Now, the one saving grace, I think, of this blush is that it is a very soft formula, so therefore if I put on too much, then I can use my fingers to smooth on a little bit more of it, and it actually is such a soft blush that I can actually just take a little bit of it and put it on with my fingers. So I'll do a little bit of that right now, and you can see that even though it is supposed to be a powder blush, that it goes on really nicely and does blend up really smoothly. So in that respect, it is like the RMS blushes, which are really my very favorite. But on the other hand, eventually RMS did come out with some more muted colors that I found to be particularly appropriate for me. I had difficulty with the original shades that they released also, and I think that that's also the case with this. You can see that even though peach is usually a shade that works really well for me, that just putting that small amount of blush on really did create a lot of peach color on my skin very fast. And I think that that's also the case, regardless of how well I apply it with other kinds of brushes of other kinds, no matter how easily I put it on. And it's also hard to keep this being even on both cheeks when it goes on in such a pigmented way. I find it much better if I can just put on a tiny little bit of blush and then build it up to the point that it looks right, rather than putting on too much and then having to figure out how to even it out. And then eventually they added one more shade of blush, and that one was a purple color, like a lavender haze type color. And I thought that was really an interesting color, but again, that was a very pigmented color also. So several months ago, all of these blushes did just disappear from the marketplace. They didn't really make an announcement or anything. And so I was hoping that they would bring them back out, and that they would bring out a line that was a little bit less pigmented and that I could wear at least some of the shades more easily. But that does not seem to be what they have decided to do. And instead what they have done is made some significant changes, but not really with regard to the level of pigmentation. So what they have done is to decrease the size of the product quite a bit. So it has gone from being 11 grams in this container to 5 grams in this new container. And it is somewhat less expensive, but it's decreased from $38 to $32. So I wouldn't say that it was cheap, but that's not really something that I object to that much, because I think that regardless of how dark your skin tone is, and regardless of how much blush you use or how frequently you use this particular blush, I think that this particular blush will last for quite a while. It is very, very highly pigmented. And so the likelihood that you're going to run out of it within 2 years is probably pretty low, I think. But I do think it's also the case that a lot of people just don't like products to get smaller. And when they get smaller, even if they never intended to be using up the large container, they're a little bit mad about that. And I've seen that quite a few times in the beauty industry. The other change that I personally think is very nice is that the containers now have the color of the blush on the top. So if you have more than one of them, you can easily figure out which one you're reaching for. And if you're like me and you have, you tend to buy multiples of the products that you really like, then this I think can be a very good thing. And I think these are pretty containers now. And I think that in terms of not taking up a lot of room in the makeup bag, I don't think that it's a problem that it's really small like this either. So of the blush shades that they used to have, there's 4 of them left. And then the new shades, I kind of, again, was hoping that they would be especially appropriate for skin tones that are not quite as pigmented. But in this case, I'm not quite sure that that's the case. When I looked at the website, they're actually not even demonstrating either of these colors on models with very light skin, but I decided to pick them up anyway, and I think that they've been okay for me. So it's not that I don't think, again, that these colors can't be worn for people with light skin. It's just that the color pigments are so saturated that I think you just have to use a very, very light hand. So you can see here these 3 colors. The one at the top is Pomelo Peach, the one in the middle is French Rosette, and the one at the bottom is Fire Moon. And except for the level of the saturation on these, I do think that they are really lovely blushes. They are among, I think, the prettiest in the marketplace. I am a really big fan of the RMS blushes, but those all do have a tiny little bit of shimmer in them. So if you're looking for a look that creates that small amount of shimmer, then those are great. I think that these create a slightly different type of a look, and I find that all of these colors are really pretty, and that they are very nice blushes that I think feel like they blend nicely on the skin. And so I just kind of don't feel like they're made for me, but I do think that they're a lovely product, which is why I feel like they should be able to offer more than 6 colors, and that there should be a range of colors that are appropriate for different skin tones. And since I'm using my fingers, I will just use my fingers for these other 2 colors too. So I'll put on a little bit of this Fire Moon color on this cheek. And then I'll put a little bit of this French Rosette one on this cheek. Then I'll just try to blend it in. And eventually, you know, in a lot of cases, my face eats up blush even when I have foundation on it. And I will smooth these out a little bit. But these are, I'm putting these on sort of on purpose, on so brightly. I would obviously never wear it like this out of the house. But I do think they're really pretty colors. And so if I can get them to behave, which does take a little bit of extra time, I think they're very nice. Now, someone said on the Instagram account that they actually hadn't changed the blush formula for these. That's not exactly true. From what I can see, it does look like the ingredient list, that it has the same ingredients in it, but some of them are in a slightly different order. And in particular, that squalane is moved up a little bit higher on the ingredient list. So it might be that these are a little bit softer and a little bit creamier than the ones from before, but in general, they feel pretty much the same to me. They perform very similarly. So now let's talk about the lip glaze products, and there have been a whole lot of different products from different companies that are supposed to make your lips plumper, and so this has become a really big category in the marketplace right now. Now, in a lot of cases, those lip plumpers have things like cayenne pepper and ginger root oil and other things in it, menthol, that are supposed to irritate your lips and make them look larger that way. And I'm really not interested in any of those products at all. I really don't need my lips to be irritated. If they're smaller, then that's fine, but I definitely don't want them to be irritated. But in this case, these do not include any kind of irritating ingredients in them at all, and instead what they include are peptides. And so the peptides are not supposed to immediately make your lips look larger. They are supposed to work over a period, they say, of 2 weeks. And they suggest that you use this product at least 3 times a day, and that you put it on generously, and then they suggest that that may help your lips. And you know, a lot of the lip products that are on the market do have at least one of these peptides in it. So there's an awfully lot of lip products on the market right now that include tripeptide 1, but this one also includes tripeptide 37 and tripeptide 38. So conceivably, it might be the case that this might do a better job depending on how well those peptides work. And then there's a couple of other ingredients in it that also might be nourishing for the lips and might also be a little bit plumping for the lips. And those include squalane and pink purslane extract. So I bought one of these the first day that I was able to get hold of it, and I used it for a couple of weeks pretty consistently according to the directions, at least putting it on a couple times a day and putting on plenty of it. And I didn't stop using the other products that I use on a regular basis, and I do use a lot of other nourishing type products really quite frequently throughout the day. And I certainly did not feel like these were bad for my lips in any way. I don't know if they were as good for my lips as some of the other things that I'm using. Did my lips become bigger than they were before I started the experiment? I'm not so sure, but you know, I've already been putting quite a lot of good things on my lips. And I certainly do like the way that these look in terms of the appearance of them. And I also really like the taste of these, the fact that they don't have any flavoring in them that I can detect. They don't have any unpleasant smell. They don't feel fake to me. And I think that they go on really well both over lipsticks, especially the Haus Labs lipsticks that I use on a regular basis, and also other lipsticks that I have. So overall, I think that of the products of this kind, the lip oils and lip glosses and lip balms that people have been releasing and are claiming are plumping and nourishing for the lips, this has really been maybe my very favorite and certainly one of my favorites. And so that is why I decided to buy 2 different shades of it in addition to the first one. And so of the shades that I have, I first picked up the shade Persimmon, which is a little bit orangish red, but not too red or orange, and I think that that looks fairly natural and is a really pretty shade for me. And then I also picked up one that's Guava, which is more like a regular light pink shade, and one that is Fig, which is a more of a darker purplish reddish color. And I think that all 3 of these have been terrific. Now I did go to Sephora and try out the other 3 colors on my hand. I felt like the macaron color was pretty similar to the Guava color. The Guava is a little bit of a warmer pink and the macaron is a little bit of a cooler pink, but I really don't think it would probably make that much of a difference on my lips. And then there were 2 colors that were more of a brown type color. One was sort of like a medium tan and then was a little bit darker. And I think I could wear both of those also, but I think these only have like a 9-month usage life, and so what I thought that I would do is see if I use up these 3 and see how well they hold up, and then maybe if I get to it being fall and I'm really still that enthusiastic about these products, then maybe I'll pick up one of those brown shades, because I think that would be a very nice autumn type of a color. So now let's talk about the rest of the Haus Labs products, and I have purchased almost everything from Haus Labs the moment that it was released onto the market, because I am enthusiastic about this brand, and I have used all of these products quite frequently, so I do have a pretty good sense of how they have performed for me over time. So as a base, I just put on a little bit of the Ilia base face milk, and this is one of those products that is sort of like a moisturizer, but without very much oil in it, that I think does serve nicely as a primer. And this has really worked well for me as a primer under a variety of different makeup, including this Haus Labs makeup. So Haus Labs does not offer a color corrector pencil, so in this case I am using the Jones Road Neutralizer pencil in the shade Light Peach. And now let's talk about the Haus Labs concealer. So this is a doe foot concealer, and it is a silicone-based concealer. And when I first put this on and I tried using it under my eyes, I did find that this really did exacerbate the look of the wrinkles around my eyes. So that is not really something that I use much of this around my eyes. But I have found for use in other areas of my face that don't have quite as much wrinkles and as texture going on, that it has worked okay. And I do think it's worked especially well as an eyelid primer. So rather than using a clear eyeshadow primer that will not really cover over the darkness on top of my eyes, I have mostly been using a concealer in a tube like this in order to both prime my eyes and provide a nice base for powder eyeshadows, and then also to cover over the darkness that has emerged more and more as I've gotten older. And I would say that most of the doe foot type concealers that are on the market, they don't really work for that because they're very irritating to my very delicate eyes. But in this case, I think that it has been very nice. It hasn't irritated my eyes at all when I've done that. It provides a nice barrier against any kind of irritating ingredients that might be in the eyeshadows. And I think that the base for the eyeshadow actually has worked out really well. So again, this is actually a quite tacky, almost like slightly rubbery type of a texture after I put this on my eyelids. And I wasn't sure that that was going to work really well as a base for powder eyeshadow, but it's actually worked very, very nicely. And I've tried on a whole bunch of different eyeshadow formulas, and this one seems to be working really well across the board. So that is one reason that I would continue to purchase this particular product, really just as an eyelid primer, and then sometimes I'll dot it on other parts of my face as well. But I do try to use it very sparingly, and if I use it around my eyes, I really only use it on this part that's on the inner corners of my eye, and I try to keep it away from the parts where there's a lot of wrinkles. And then generally I just use a soft brush to brush both concealer and foundation into my skin. And I do think that's fairly important. I think that I would much rather have a too little foundation or too little concealer on my face than to have areas that look like they're not really blended in. So I think that it's been worked well for me to use a little brush like this. And then next, let's talk about this foundation. So this foundation comes in, I think, 51 shades, and I was able to go to Sephora and to swatch the shades. They had all the shades in stock, and so I was able to try them on and see which ones worked the best for me. And I would highly advise doing that, because I think that the one issue with this particular foundation line is that it can be very, very confusing if you try to do it without going to the store. So the thing to know about this foundation, as well as really all of the other Haus Labs products, including the bronzers and the concealers, is that they are really using a backwards system with regard to how they are categorizing colors. So what they are trying to do is just suggest that yellow colors are cool and reddish or pink colors are warm. And that is really opposite of pretty much every other brand on the planet except for MAC. Now, if you're used to MAC, then this might come a little bit less of a surprise. But if you're not used to MAC, then it can be very, very confusing in terms of which color you're getting and why it is that the color that you thought was going to work for you is just so totally off. Now, I do think it's the case that if you have doubts and if you can't go to Sephora, that you might be able to make a sense of some things by doing the quiz on the Haus Labs website in terms of the foundation color. I did do that, and they actually came up with exactly the color that I found worked for me when I went to the store and tried on a bunch of different shades. And so therefore, I think that that may be a reasonable way to get a good match. But I think that if at all possible, that it's really a good idea to go to Sephora, to swatch a bunch of different shades, and then to actually go out of the store and look at the shades in real light and to see which ones actually work well for you. So for me, the color that I ended up purchasing was just shade 100, which is supposed to have muted peach undertones, and I think that this has worked really well for me. I think that the shade that's lighter than that, which I think is 070, something like that, which is supposed to be fair with light peach undertones, that one would have been okay. And there was another one that's, I think, 110 that probably would have been okay. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, and you probably don't have to be an exact match for most people. But I do think that if you can go to the store and try on some things, you're likely to get the best match for you. But the good thing is that they do have a lot of skin tones that are in olive. And they also have one foundation that's just very, very light, like close to being white. So if you want to use that to tone down another foundation, either one of the Haus Labs foundations or another one that you own, then that could be worth giving a try to also. I don't know how many people could actually wear that white shade, but I think as a mixer, it could be very, very helpful for many people. So I think for me, I try not to get much darker during the summer. I am am fairly successful with that. But I think that if you are a person whose foundation shades change a lot during the summer versus the winter, then I think that that whiter foundation shade could be really helpful in terms of taking a darker foundation shade that you might already have and toning it down a little bit so it's a little bit less dark for use during the winter months. And this is a foundation that is made in Korea, and I think that compared to most of the foundations that I have used, it does go on very, very thin, but it nonetheless gives quite a bit of coverage. So they're saying that it's a medium coverage, and I think that even if I just use one pump, as I did in the video, I think that I'm getting something that's somewhere between light and medium coverage, in my view, which I think is covering quite a bit of imperfections over, but still allowing some of the skin to show through. And this is a silicone foundation, and I'm not always that big of a fan of silicone foundations. It hasn't been nearly as annoying like that as a lot of silicone foundations are. And I think as a foundation that looks pretty and that feels good on my skin, this is one that I don't mind wearing at all. Now, it still is the case that I don't wear silicone foundations more than occasionally. I tend to find that if I do, my skin quality tends to disintegrate over time. I think it's probably not the best thing to put down a layer of on your skin that is keeping dirt and bacteria and fungi and sweat and dead skin cells. I don't think that's the greatest idea to have something like that trapping those things on my skin. Now, obviously, I want to make a big effort to remove that foundation at the end of the day, which I really feel like I'm mostly able to do either by using the Lisa Eldridge cleanser or by using my pharmacy cleanser. But I really still feel like it's better for me if I just use a silicone-based foundation like this on my skin on occasion if I want to look particularly nice. But of the silicone foundations that I have tried, I think this one is one of the better ones. And I think especially that it's a relatively reasonable price, especially for the quality of the product that you're getting. And I certainly am very happy with all of the shades in this line, and I'm also really happy with the fact that it hasn't irritated my skin at all, regardless of whether I put a primer of any kind on it. And then next I'm putting on a brow pencil from Haus Labs. And this brow pencil comes in 13 shades, so that's an awfully lot of shades. That may be more shades than really any other brow pencil that I have used. So as an experiment, I decided to get this in the lightest shade, which is called Soft Blonde. And I think that most of the time when companies make a really light blonde eyebrow pencils, that they tend to be really too warm, so they tend to really clash with my graying hair. And in this case, I think it hasn't been too bad. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily my very favorite eyebrow pencil, but this one is very nice, and I do appreciate the fact that it's such a light color. I kind of wish that there were some other companies that created brow pencils that were in this light shade too. I think that most of the time the brow pencils that companies offer, the lightest shade that will work for me is more like a taupe, and that's quite a bit darker than my own natural brow hairs have ever been. And so I feel like I'm really getting a kind of away from my own natural look and defining my brows more than they really need to be defined, in my opinion. Now this is one of those brow pencils. It just has one of those thin little micro tips, the kind that people associate with Anastasia Brow Wiz. It hasn't broken on me, and it's been I think almost 2 years, so that part has been good, but I kind of feel like I really do need to use a brow gel to go with it, because this creates a very kind of a wispy brow, considering how few brow hairs I personally have. And I haven't really been able to find any brow gels that have a good shade that will be this light. So even though I'm using a shade that's really this light, my brows end up being a lot darker because of the brow gel that I put on top. So in this case, I used the Jones Road brow gel in the shade Ash. So this is kind of designed to go with graying hair. And I think this is a nice product because it really does do a very good job of kind of grabbing hold of all of the peach fuzz hairs that I have on my brows and making them look like real brow hairs. But I don't feel like it's necessarily the understated look that I was kind of moving towards when I used this particular Haus Labs pencil. The other thing that I do like about this Haus Labs pencil is that it includes a little spoolie on the end of this. And so what I tend to use this for is I don't really have enough brows to begin with and I need to comb them. But what I do is put on the brow pencil, then I put on the brow gel, and then I will use this to brush through the brow gel to make it look more natural. And then now let's talk about the eyeshadow. So last Christmas or so, Haus Labs released 2 eyeshadow palettes. One was the one that I have, which is volume 1 of what they're calling the eye library, and then there's a second version of it with different colors in it. And in both cases, 3 of the shades are really kind of glittery shades, and then there's 3 that are matte shades. So what I found with this kit is that the glitter shades did irritate my eyes quite a lot, and I'm not quite sure why that is in terms of what EWG thinks is problematic. I think it may be because of this stuff that's called bioglitter, and the bioglitter is, I think, nanocellulose, so it is a new product that has been developed because the EU has outlawed plastic glitter. And I think it's good that the EU has outlawed plastic glitter, but I have heard of some other people that have had issues with this bioglitter, and I think that that might be why this particular eyeshadow was so irritating to me. And it really was much more irritating to me than really most of the other irritating eyeshadows that I have used for quite a long time. Now it's odd because the bioglitter was only listed on the volume 2 and it's not listed for the volume 1, but I think that this really looks very similar to the volume 2 one, so I think this one must have the bioglitter in it also. It's no really great loss because I think that this is so glittery that it's kind of over the top, and so it's really not anything that I would imagine that I would ever actually wear. Now I will say that these 3 matte shades have been really terrific for me. They are talc-free. They haven't irritated my eyes at all, even when I have put them directly down on my eyes. They go on really, really nicely. They seem to have a lot of creaminess to them, in the same way that the blush has a lot of creaminess to them. And even though these colors, they look like, oh, they would not be colors that would be really good for me, especially that kind of a reddish orange color, I think that they've actually looked really nice, and that I'm able to put them on quite easily and make a really nice look, or a couple of really nice looks with them. And I think this particular palette is more like a fall palette, and so I did get a little bit of use out of that right when I bought it at the end of the fall of last year, and I think I'm going to probably bring this one out again and use it for that. So I think that for $49, that just buying these 3 shades, that's a little bit on the steep side. I wouldn't do that, but I think maybe if I could get a really good discount for it, that this is a very nice eyeshadows in terms of the mattes. And I also think that if Haus Labs were to come out with a more of a standard eyeshadow palette that had more of a variety of mattes in it, and just maybe 1 or 2 shimmers that were not quite so glittery, that would be something that I would be very, very interested in. Now, Haus Labs also makes an eyeliner pencil, and so I did try 1 shade in this. I feel like I have never had a very good experience with this pencil. I feel like it's always been very difficult for me to put on. So I feel like I have developed over time a really long list of criteria that I really want if I'm going to use an eyeliner pencil. So what I realized that I want is one that, above all, does not irritate my eyes. I want it to go on smoothly. I want it to be something that I can smudge around a little bit and make it look softer right after I put it on. But then I want it to be something that will kind of harden down into place and then not budge for a while until I take it off. And certainly I don't want it to be smearing around and looking bad, and I also don't really want it to be disappearing. And I'd like for the colors to be nice. So I feel like this Haus Labs pencil has performed fine on all of those, except for the fact that it always has been extremely difficult to get it to be on my eyes at all. So this one is maybe 18 months or so old, so it's become a little bit more difficult to apply, but it really was never very easy to apply to my eyes. I always did struggle with that, and that is why I did not use it very much. But I do think that other than that, it could be a nice pencil, so I think it's too bad that at least this one did not work for me. Now the Haus Labs eyeliners, they do have 18 shades, so that is a really wide range. So if you could get them to work for you, then that would be a plus. I think there is one shade that has aluminum powder in it, which is one of their more silvery type shades, and so that is not one that I would use. And then now let's talk about the powder. And so this is a talc-free powder. It has squalane as the second ingredient. It has some fermented arnica in it, which in theory should make it good for the skin. And it's made in Italy. There are 5 shades. It's a loose powder, and so it has this little mesh screen on the top. And I think that this has been an okay powder for me. I don't know that I think that this is the powder that I have liked the most recently. I think that the ones that I have really liked, I actually like the Mauve Beauty one, although I wish it were in a container like this. Then I would be really, really crazy about it. And I like the Kosas powder, and there's one from Laura Mercier that is called the Real Flawless, kind of a pressed powder. And that one I do like a lot. So I think that this one has been nice, and I've tried it with the variety of different kinds of foundations, and I think that it has worked fairly well with all of these. So I don't think that this is a mistake to purchase, and I do really like this container. Now, it is the case that I divide powders into 2 different categories. So there are certain powders that have some cornstarch in them that I think are pretty good at absorbing oil and absorbing sweat, and that I especially like to use on top of a cream foundation, like for instance the What the foundation from Jones Road, or the Makeup by Mario foundation, that I feel makes those kinds of foundations look a lot better on me and absorbs a lot of that extra oil. And then there are ones like these that are really not so much oil absorbing and that just do look nice on the skin and that work well with the variety of other foundations that are not quite so greasy. So this is one that I would more use sort of on an everyday basis, and less in the summer and less with a foundation that's very creamy. And now let's talk about bronzer. And bronzer, I think, is one of Haus Labs' top product categories. I think that this is really impressive how many different shades of bronzer that they have. And I also really, really like this bronzer formula. So they have 12 different shades of bronzer, and I have 3 of the shades, the 3 that are the lightest. So we will compare those, and then I will talk about a few of the other shades that I have noticed at Sephora and tried out there, and try to make a little bit of sense out of them. And so in terms of the formula for these, I think that they are super velvety. They are even nicer than the blushes in terms of the formula for them. I think that they go on and they look really pretty and they behave really well. They do have, again, that fermented arnica in it. They're talc-free. Now, personally, I do prefer a bronzer that is a matte product. What I tend to do is to use the bronzer fairly diffusely over basically the entire top half of my face, focusing more on the bronzy type areas. And then I put some on under my chin to darken my neck a little bit. But I'm really using it fairly broadly, just to give myself, you know, the look that I actually have a tan. And if the bronzer is too shimmery, then I really don't feel like I can do that, and it really just gives me the appearance that I'm sweating. So I'm appreciative of the fact that these are matte bronzers and that they do go on very lightly and that they look very pretty and natural. And then if I'm going to use a highlighter of whatever kind, then I will put that over the top. These are the three lightest shades, and I do think they look quite a bit different from one another. Light level 1 is supposed to be a warm and a light color and muted. But what I feel like is that this one is almost like a taupe that's a little bit on the gray side. So I don't think that it looks all that rosy. I think it more looks like almost like something that you could use as a contour. Then the one in the middle is light level 2, and they claim that that one is a cool shade. But what they mean by that is yellow. Now, again, they're using that confusing terminology, but in certain lights, this certainly does look more yellow than the other two. And so I think that to pull off one that is that yellow, you really need to have a skin tone that is fairly yellow itself. And I think that my skin tone is much more in the middle, and that if I start to use a bronzer that's a little bit too yellow, that will start to make me look a little bit too sallow. Light level 3 is supposed to be a neutral kind of a color, but light. And I do think this one has worked better for me. It tends to be more of a peachy type color, and that seems to be what I do the best with. So it's adding, my skin I think tends to be fairly peachy to begin with, and so if I put a little bit of a bronzer on top of it that looks even more peachy, then that seems to work well for me. So now if we go on to the next two shades that I have actually tried out, the light level 4, that one is very close to light level 3, but it is just more pigmented. And then light level 5, I actually think has some potential for a number of different people, and that one actually does have a rosy color to it. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you kind of a sunburnt type of a look, where it's a bronzy type of a look, but it looks just a little bit burned, then that could be one to try out as well. And I think that all 5 of those shades conceivably could be useful for people with fair skin like mine. It really just depends on what kind of a look you're looking for and what kind of an undertone you have. And then the other 7 shades that they offer, they're really designed for much darker skin tones. And so now let's talk about one of my other really favorite Haus Labs products, and really one of my favorite lipstick products of all, and those are the Haus Labs Le Monster Lip Crayons. And so this comes in a whole bunch of different shades. I think it's 16 matte shades and then 1 shimmery shade. And there's a variety of different colors. There's 3 different reds. I have 2 of those. And then there's some neutrals and some pinks, and there are ranges of different colors. But I think that this is very pretty in terms of it drawing on very nice and neat, but also having kind of a feeling of like a velvety type of feeling to them, and they seem to stay in place really well. It's not that they get dried and feel uncomfortable, but I just think that they're a very, very nice product. And that compared to a lot of other matte lipsticks that are on the marketplace, they are very wearable and very pleasant to wear, and they also do give a very nice and fairly well-lasting matte lip look. And I have found that these are fine to wear on their own, and I also think that they have worked really, really well for me underneath the new lip glazes that I have been wearing recently, and under some other products. So I especially like them when I use them in conjunction with the Isamaya lip balms and from the Lips collection. I think that those are really terrific also. And I think that in general that these have worked for me as well as many of the lipsticks that I have in my collection that are much, much more expensive. And I have had some of these ever since they came out, which was almost 2 years ago, and they seem to be holding up really, really well. And these do include a number of ingredients that are good for the lips, including sodium hyaluronate, mango, butter, and ceramides. So next, let's talk about the highlighters. So in this case, I don't have a bronzy highlighter, but I do have this pink highlighter that is called Rose Quartz. So what I found is that I thought that most of the highlighters from Haus Labs were very, very shiny and would probably be a little too shiny for me to be able to use easily. So I tried really all of the shades that they offered, and I thought that this one seemed like it was the least ostentatious one, and that one that I thought would be the prettiest and easiest for me to use. These are very expensive highlighters, so they are $40, which I think is more than most highlighters. But again, these powder products from Haus Labs. They are very, very nice, and they do have the fermented arnica in them. They do go on really easily. If you want to put this on with your fingers, you could certainly do that. It does blend very easily. And I think that they are very pretty. Now, some of these do get very, very shiny, so you have to be careful about the ones that you choose. And the ones that I would have thought would have looked the most natural on me, often some of those, like the peach one, I think, that some of those tended to be super, super shiny. So I do have one more product from Haus Labs that I have tried, and this is called the Haus Labs Ph.D. Hybrid Lip Oil. So this is sort of the same as the Hybrid Lip Glaze that I've been talking about, except that it's more like a translucent. And this is actually a color-changing balm. So I think that's why it was originally called Ph.D., because it's color-changing based on the pH. And the color-changing ingredient that is in this is the red number 27, and that one is not present in the lip glazes at all, and I do not feel like they change colors into this red hot pink at all. It also has 5 shades, which are red, pink, orange berry, and clear. So it's been a while since I had tried on this particular lip oil, and now that I'm trying it on right now, I don't dislike it as much as I remembered. It definitely did turn into a pink on my lips, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it looks kind of pretty and kind of spring-like. Maybe I'm liking it more because it's becoming spring and it's reminding me of spring. That very well may be the case. It doesn't feel bad on my lips, and it does have a couple of peptides in it that probably are good for my lips. So maybe I will try to give it a little bit more of a chance as it becomes more spring and this color pink is attractive. But I still think that the lip glazes are much more appealing to me, and that I probably wouldn't buy this one again, but I very well might buy more of those lip glazes, even in addition to the ones that I already have. Now there's one more product that's for the lips that Haus Labs has that I haven't actually tried, except at the store. And this is the Haus Labs Atomic Shake Lip Lacquer. So what they say that this is a paint-on high-impact liquid lipstick with a transfer-proof, super glossy finish that lasts and lasts, no reapplying necessary. Well, so this is supposed to be a really serious liquid lipstick, and it's a lipstick that you need to kind of paint on your lips, and then you have to leave your lips open, because otherwise your lips kind of get stuck together. So until it gets dry, you can't really close your mouth. I think that's a little bit too much for me, and I'm not that crazy about liquid lipsticks anyway. I think that maybe if I were going to be Lady Gaga and I were going to perform outdoors at a concert, but I don't really want my lipstick to last like that. And I didn't see very good reviews of this on Sephora or in general, so I didn't pick that one up. And then the last product is also a product that I think is primarily best viewed as like stage makeup. So for performing or maybe Halloween costumes or things like that. And that is what they're called pigment paints. And so this is a very sticky silicone type formula that you can use in a variety of bright colors that will go onto your skin, and you can smear it all around, and it provides a really strong base that stays on very, very well in terms of being waterproof, and is probably going to be fairly difficult to get off even when you are trying. So, you know, I was a little bit interested in this because they make one shade that they say is Lady Gaga's go-to shade, which is a peach shade. And I kind of thought that it would not be a bad thing for me because I thought that this would be a product that maybe I could put on and then I could use as a really muted blush, and that it would just stay in place, and that I could also maybe use it as an eyeshadow. So I did pick this up, and I will show you what it looks like on the back of my hand. It is, first of all, a fairly dark peach. And so if I were to put this, when I put this directly on my cheeks, that's an awfully lot of bright blush. And this is a product that is very, very hard to blend out. That once you put this down, it's going to stay in place and you're really not going to be able to blend it off. And so you need to be really, really careful with it. And I have never been able to get this on my cheeks without mixing it in with foundation or something to get to a point that it hasn't looked really garish and weird. And when I put it on my eyes, it has irritated my eyes. And I kind of don't really like the texture of this. It's way too silicone-y. So it's kind of been a disaster for me. But I can kind of see why, if you are Lady Gaga and you want to perform and you want a blush shade or a lip shade or an eye shade that is sort of similar to your natural color, that you might be able to make this work. Maybe. I guess she must be able to. But I think that for me, it really has not been a product that I have figured out how to use in a way that has been flattering or attractive for me. And it did irritate my eyes, as I said. But I think that if what you want to do is to buy a red pigment that makes you look like the devil for Halloween, or if you want to paint, go to a festival and you want to paint some beautiful colors on your face, if you want to do things like that, I think that this could be a really good product, because I think it probably is a lot cleaner than a lot of the other products on the market. So there may be a particular niche for this, but I don't think it's so much in terms of everyday makeup. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if you have tried any Haus Labs products yourself, then please let me know what your experiences with those have been in the comments section. In addition, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, then I really hope you will go ahead and do that. And Coco and I love you very much, so thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. What a great dog. Thank you. Thank you.